As you can see, I'm not in my office. I'm standing here with my coffee set up, and I'm going to make some coffee while we're doing this video because today we're going to talk about two books that I think are fairly related to this. The first book is called The Burnout Society, which is a book written by Byung-Chul Han, published in 2015. I think I picked this book up because Michael Burns did a video about it, and I thought it was an interesting discussion, so I decided I wanted to give it a read. It was a fairly interesting book. The book digs into the major changes in society and how this has led to the start of depression. I don't necessarily agree with portions of the book, specifically some of the root causes around depression. I think that there's other books that are written by psychologists that are better than something written by a philosopher. However, I do think it's fairly interesting. I also disagree with some of the claims that we've gone through such a societal transformation that Han makes. But you know, we've definitely gone through many changes as a society. The second book is the Book of Coffee, written by Julian Baggini and published in May of 2026. This book is something of a spiritual sequel to the Book of Tea, which was written in 1906 and is about the disappearing tea room culture in Japan. So this is definitely a different type of book than what I normally kind of read. But I thought it was really fascinating. And the Book of Tea is very much about a spiritual aspect of tea and about Zen Taoism. This book is a little less focused on that. This book is fairly secular and is something pulling of the sublime from the ordinary rather than finding sublime from the divine. Han argues that we have moved from a discipline authority type society to an achievement subject society. The argument here is that while we no longer are focused on controlling society through discipline, through punishment, which is a negative-based society, we're more focused on what we can do, what we can achieve. I kind of disagree with this on its face, and I think it's kind of more that we have split in our society where some people are this more, while some people are being treated as they are the achievement subject society rather than discipline authority. I think there's a portion of our society that is absolutely, definitely still treated with the whole discipline authority type mentality. Han argues that this is the root cause of depression, that we are hyperactive and we exhaust ourselves because we still aren't doing enough no matter how much we do. We multitask and become animalistic rather than having a life of calm contemplation, or vita contempla. Han argues that we have gone from homo faber to anima laboris. Basically, man that makes things, to an animal that labors. That's kind of what he's arguing that we do through our movement from being contemplative to multitasking and focusing on all these different, not being able to focus and working on all these different things at once. I have mixed feelings about some of these theories. I think Han's perspective misses the stratification of our society, as I said earlier. I do not believe that every portion of our society is managed in this achievement subject manner. I believe portions are still controlled through discipline control. I believe white populations control black and brown populations in this older approach that Han claims has been mostly replaced with the achievement-focused society. I'm being generalizing here, but I mean, this is the whole carceral state and the carceral pipeline that a lot of thinkers talk about. Whenever people are talking about abolishing prison, this is generally what they're talking about, is this stratification of our society in a way that isn't necessarily fair to everybody. Han argues that depression only occurs in this hyper-positive society driven by achievement. I'm not entirely sure I agree with this. There are all the jokes of the 1950s housewives on Xanax and or drunk all the time. This is essentially self-medication because something is wrong inherently with their lives that society is ignoring. And I don't necessarily think that those housewives were doing achievement. I mean, they were under the auspices of the discipline control society in the 50s and even earlier than that. So, I think that there's more complexity to this subject than what Hahn is kind of arguing, but I think that's also okay. He's trying to flatten this. This was a very short book too, by the way. So I think it's fine that it was somewhat an extreme argument. I think that kind of is part of the point, is saying that we're in a society of extremes now, and so that's causing some of these issues. Hahn further talks about hysteria being a real diagnosis, but again, this is a deeply misogynistic diagnosis, and we've learned significantly more about how the brain works and how depression works and what hysteria actually was than what Hahn is really contemplating. And some of this is probably because philosophy, in my opinion, is still heavily influenced by Freud rather than looking at newer types of psychology. Like The Body Keeps the Score is a fantastic book that digs into trauma, addiction, and some of the ways that we can treat it that I think kind of directly refute the burnout society, but I think there's still interesting ideas in this book. I think if we're speaking in generalities in the general American population or the middle class or what people kind of think of as the default person in the United States, then I would kind of say, yes, we can say that this is correct. You're wealthy, you're upper middle class, those sorts of people that are in television for the most part. I don't know if you're familiar with the term toxic positivity, but I would kind of argue that what Hahn is kind of talking about here is the risk of toxic positivity, and that it notes it is a dysfunction. Earlier I mentioned about the animalistic idea of multitasking. A lot of people think this is heavily desired skill in the current workplace, which, it kind of is. Hahn notes that when animals feed, they are looking out for other animals that are looking to steal that, or that are looking to make them prey, or, so they're constantly having to multitask, and they're not able to just relax into the moment of feeding. I mean, within a group, there still has to be hierarchy and dominance and a lot of who gets the food first. Depending on the type of animal, of course. I think that this, again, is overgeneralization towards like stereotypical carnivore behavior. I don't think it's necessarily true in every type of animal, but I get what he's going for here. Despite missing the mark in some ways, I do believe his diagnosis is correct in this case. People do not allow themselves to dig deeper into things. And and that's actually part of the reason why I started this channel, is because I was doing a lot of reading, and I would just finish a book and move on to the next thing and not really contemplate much about the book. And so writing the scripts that I do and thinking about it in context of another book allows me to get a little bit deeper into the things that I'm reading. And I think that's a really good thing. People will jump from one item to item, or a new story to story, or Instagram reel or TikTok video. I've been thinking about this with my reading, as I kind of said. As I said earlier, the second book is called The Book of Coffee. This book has a foreword and afterwards by a favorite YouTuber of mine, James Hoffman. And I used a recipe of his to brew my coffee. This is a daily ritual for me. I do this every morning. I make my coffee for my wife and for myself. I take time every morning to just kind of relax into my coffee brewing routine. I think it really helps with things. And in the Book of Coffee, Baggini encourages a little lightness when it comes to making coffee. But I found the consistent routine allows me to move into a more meditative state. Didn't exactly do that today, I would say. But my first cup of coffee, I certainly did. I find it relaxing to just kind of rest into my coffee. I like enjoying, after brewing my coffee before going into work, I'll sit in either this chair or another chair that we have and just kind of rest and enjoy the flavor of the coffee and what it's doing. The Book of Coffee really encourages us to do that. Both in the text in itself and of course in the afterword, James does a really great job kind of explaining how he enjoys coffee and how we should also enjoy terrible coffee at times. And I think that helps us get to know coffee better and get to treat it like a serious beverage instead of just, the morning brown that helps us get going. Coffee, like wine, can have a lot of complex flavors. And for example, I'm drinking an Onyx coffee called Long Miles, which has some fig notes. It has some fig notes, cane sugar. It's got a real sweetness to it. I don't really notice the blackberry so much that the tasting notes say, but I definitely do notice the caramel. And I do like looking at, the tasting notes from Onyx because they're usually fairly accurate and they give me a point of reference for at least trying to taste similar things. I usually taste it beforehand before reading the tasting notes just to see what's there. I mean, you don't always notice a lot of the flavors, especially if you start drinking it while it's really hot. And then, of course, if you burn your mouth. But as it cools, there is kind of this perfect area where it has the best expression of its flavors. And I really think that you can enjoy and think about the number of lives that you've touched by making that cup of coffee. In this case, this coffee was was grown at Long Miles Munian Hill. I'm not sure what country that is in. It doesn't exactly say. Oh, Burundi. It's a Burundi coffee. So you've grown it. You've impacted all the people in Burundi who helped grow this coffee, and all the people that helped kind of do the initial processing. Which is in this case is a washed and fermented coffee. It's shipped from, and that takes 15 days, which is, significant. Somebody has to be watching this so animals don't eat the seed or the cherries, the coffee bean. And then, it's shipped eventually to Arkansas, Bentonville, Arkansas, and they roast the beans, and then somebody at Onyx certainly tasted it, wrote up the tasting notes, and then they designed the packaging and did all of that. So there's a whole chain of people who are impacted. And if you think about the way that you buy your coffee, like for example, the Onyx likes to include a transparency report on all their coffees. So in this case, the greens cost $7.40. Production cost $5.45. Transportation cost 9 cents. Onyx price was $12.94. That's what they paid for it after the green costs and production costs. And I think I paid $28 for this, so Onyx made pretty good margins on it. Cup score is 87, and then transparency grade that's a B. I think this sort of reflection is missing in much of our achievement-based society, taking a step back and reflecting on what we've done. The simple act of stopping, saying, no, I'm not going to scroll, is a revolutionary act half the time. You're basically rejecting our current mode of surveillance capitalism. You're not putting more data into the AI data centers. And I think that's important. Our attention has been commodified, packaged, and sold to the highest bidder, or in some cases, the lowest bidder. Stepping back and enjoying our coffee and reflecting on the coffee allows us a moment of calm, a space to control our emotions, our attention, and how we want to enter the day. We can build larger communities around this. Baghini argues that the cafe itself is a valuable place to find like-minded people. Even at first, it's just becoming a regular at a single or a few coffee shops. People get to recognizing you and then knowing you. And I think that is important. It also kind of lends itself to the less drinking and aspect of culture today. And you can become a regular at a coffee shop. You will eventually make friends through this. It's a place to learn about the community you're in through indirect conversations. You know, you can eavesdrop, you just don't engage with it. So you can kind of learn what's going on around you. I mean, I think this is especially important if you're moving to a new neighborhood, kind of enjoying the public space that you can relax and share with other people. Han, I think, would recommend the Book of Coffee as a text imploring people through coffee to do what his recommendations at the end of Burnout Society are, which is reflect and find an emotional center. I've been trying to take this sort of reflection seriously. This channel is very much part of it. I will often write a section of a video while I'm reading a book, like I did for If Anyone Builds It, or after I finish reading a book and before I jump into the second book. I did this for the video I'm going to be doing next on techno-negative and the infinite alphabet. This video, I jumped from the Book of Coffee to the Burnout Society, then did some thinking about what I'd want to say or how I'd want to say it. All three avenues offer me different routes to reflection, some easier than others, some more all-encompassing than others. So I hope you found this video useful. I didn't find everything useful in Han's books, but there were some useful tidbits for discussions with the Book of Coffee. As for the Book of Coffee, I think if you're focused, you can replace coffee with the Book of Cooking. So what I'm trying to say is taking what you learn from the Book of Coffee about being focused and attentive to the craft of making coffee, the craft of enjoying coffee around other people, the craft of understanding the things that go in to make your coffee excellent. You can take all those things and apply it to cooking. I mean, the Book of Food, there's so many restaurants that you can go to and become a regular at these different restaurants. It's a lot more expensive, but you can also become a regular at a grocery store that specializes in a type of food that you especially like to dig into and prepare. And then you can dig into that focus and find a calm in it and a way to relax into that world in a way that is deeply rewarding. I expect to revisit the Book of Coffee on a regular basis, which I just want to kind of call out. I really enjoyed the feel of this book in my hand. It's interesting because of it's a really thick cardboard type cover, and then the paper goes to the whole edge of this cardstock, which gives you a really interesting reading experience. The book was really definitely intended to be read by, read at a distance, because the text is large and it's got all these little doodles in it and ways of enjoying your coffee. And I really think that it's a nice way of thinking about coffee and the world that we live in. I definitely think that if you like coffee, you should pick up this book and give it a read. I plan on reading it again, like I mentioned. And, the afterword is just delightful. So, what did you think? Have you read either of these books? Did you find The Burnout Society more compelling than I did? Do you find something meaningful to you in the Book of Coffee? Either way, leave a comment below, and I really appreciate you stopping by and checking out my video. I hope you have a good one. Thank you.